Hello and welcome friends to House of Props. I'm Buddy and today I'm going to show you the steps that I use to make this Mandalorian Beskar Spear as well as Din Djarin's gift for Grogu. Let's get started. The spear pieces were printed on my Ender 3 Pro. To clean up the surface and remove the print layers, I'm going to use a technique I've found to work really well. I began by sanding the surface with a 120 grit sandpaper, then switch to a 180 grit, and finish with a 400 grit. This process takes a little time, but the outcome is totally worth it. While I'm sanding, go ahead and hit those subscribe and notification buttons so you will be notified when a new video drops. Or if you're able to, scan this code to see all my previous builds. You can see the difference between the sanded surface and the areas which haven't been touched. Just keep going until the entire surface is sanded. To fill the seam between the two spearhead pieces, I'm going to use this glazing and spot putty from Mando. This putty can be generously applied to the seam, and when it's dry it can be smoothed with a 180 grit sandpaper. Then if you need to, add a second layer and repeat the process. When working with this putty, I always make sure to wear a face mask and work in a well ventilated area. Next, I'm going to glue these pieces into a 58-inch long piece of 1/2-inch PVC pipe by using CA glue. By adding these 3D printed pieces to a 58-inch piece of pipe, I will be left with a 6-foot long spear. To make the glue dry faster, I'm using a couple of drops of Zip Kicker. This allows for a faster build time. Before I begin painting, I use a 180 grit sandpaper and lightly sand the PVC surface. This will help the paint adhere to the pipe and make it less likely to run. To prime and help smooth the 3D prints, I always use a filler and sandable primer. This will help fill in any print layers I may have missed or was unable to reach. I always apply 3 coats and sand in between each coat. This may seem like overkill, but in the end, it is worth it. To smooth each primer layer, I use the 180 grit sandpaper. Make sure to remove the sanding dust before applying the next layer, or you can get specks in the following coats. After the primer layers, I apply 2 layers of a high gloss black spray paint. This will help the metallic paint really shine. To create the Beskar look, I'm using Spaz Mirror Chrome spray paint. I have fallen in love with this paint and it has become my all-time go-to metallic spray because it gives such an amazing finish. Another great thing about this paint is that it dries fairly quickly, which allows for a faster paint time. So those are the steps I use to make Mando's Beskar Spear. I've been wanting to make the spear for a while now, and after the last episode of the book of Boba Fett, I decided to finally break down and make it. But as we've seen in episode 5, the spear is melted down and reformed. I do want to draw attention to the fact that the only piece of the spear we've seen being worked with is the head. What has happened or will happen to the Beskar shaft? Let me know what you think in the comments below.
What shall I forge?
Something for a foundling.
This is the way.
For a specific foundling. Grogu.
What shall I forge for the foundling Grogu?
After seeing this sequence of the gift being wrapped, I needed to make this little package. A link to my stencil can be found below. You can print the stencil on paper, but the paper will absorb some paint, get soggy, and tear easily. So I recommend printing on something like acetate because the acetate is more durable and can be wiped down, cleaned, and reused. I cut my stencil using a hobby knife, but you can use a Cricut cutter or something equivalent. Once the stencil was cut completely, I aligned this on a 16" by 12" piece of fabric. I made sure to leave a little spare along the edges so I can fray the ends when I'm finished. I simply taped the stencil down with painter's tape. And using a brush with white acrylic pounced the openings in the stencil. When finished with the stencil in this position, I overlapped the edges of the stencil with an already painted area in order to continue the design to cover the entire piece of fabric. And then repeated the process on the other side of the fabric as well so that I had an overall print. After painting a few, I lift the corner of the stencil just to make sure it is working properly. When the paint had dried, I started to fray the edges by removing some of the threads. I would do this up to the point where I was left with about 1/4 inch of fray around the edge. A lot of this I could do without any help, but I found I needed to use the tip of my hobby knife to start the process on freshly cut edges. To create the knot, I begin by folding one corner over an object to help define the shape. Then fold the opposite corner in half and then over the first corner. Take the other 2 corners and tie these around each other only once. You don't want a full knot. Then it was all about adjusting the protruding corners, or ears, so they point in the right directions and are equal on each side. These are the steps I used to create Grogu's mystery gift packaging. Let me know in the comments what you think Din Djarin had made for Grogu. If you have enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends and family, and subscribe. And remember, if you are building any of my builds or using any of my templates, feel free and tag me at House of Props on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok because I would really like to see your fantastic work. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.